godlike Achilles. Before Patroclus died, you often showed the Trojans mercy, spared many from death. Now none shall escape it. Fate has delivered them all to you.
Remember Troy? That one Total War game based in Greek mythology and the war between the Trojans and the Achaeans? No? Well, I do, but I'm not surprised if you don't. If we check the Steam charts, Rome 2, a game from almost 10 years ago, still brings all the boys to the fields of Mars, while Troy, a game not even 3 years old, is almost extinct. Not a lot of players picked this one up, despite being one of my personal favorite Total War games in the past decade. In this video, you and I will be diving into why A Total War Saga Troy failed so miserably, and how CA might hope to avoid this mistake again. And if that sounds good to you, I really hope you leave a like and consider supporting me on Patreon, as every donation means the world to me. And now, why A Total War Saga Troy failed.
Call Troy your home then.
Brother, I can fight!
Go. Seek shelter. There'll be plenty of fighting ahead.
For a guy who absolutely loves Mediterranean history, it's weird that I wasn't more excited for Troy than I was. In the trailers before the game came out, we were shown footage that reminded many of the more fantastical Warhammer games or indeed Three Kingdoms, and all of these games have many mythological or supernatural aspects to them. I think that in part has something to do with my hesitation for hype. It came alongside a narrative that Troy was supposed to show us the truth behind the myth, meaning that Troy took a middle road in terms of fantasy and full-on history. I think this approach was a mistake in several ways. The first is that this middle road approach failed to please anyone, while attempting to please everyone. In this way, it failed to cater to the historical audience who's literally thirsting for more historical Total War, and it did not manage to capture the attention of the more fantasy-inclined among the fans. The second mistake was to release Troy on the Epic Games Store as an exclusive. Since Empire, every single Total War has been released on Steam, and that is where players have the Total War library, mods, and communities. This move was no doubt made due to financial reasons. Epic has deep pockets, and likely to some extent financed the making of Troy. I say this because somehow, in a totally unprecedented move, A Total War Saga Troy was actually free of charge if you downloaded it on day one, which is actually insane considering that this game was more or less a full-priced PC game afterwards. The third and final major mistake was how the battle map showcases appeared. For a game that at least in spirit was meant to cater to historical fans, these battles looked way too mobile-like. I think it's easy to see why. It partially comes down to the UI, which is just absolutely all over the place, the colors looked as if they were turned all the way up, and for some reason, the visuals on the battle maps looked rather underwhelming in the trailers. It also didn't help that the combat itself showed none of the tailored sequences seen in Shogun 2, for example, a game with arguably the most perfect match combat in this series. And if you missed Shogun 2, make sure to check out my 2022 review of Total War Shogun 2 right here. In total then, right from the get-go, Troy as a concept made several bad choices in appealing to the fanbase, who both wanted something else and wanted it on their preferred platform. The game itself is a different topic though. Troy offers us a truly massive map of hyper-ancient Greece. From the mountains of Achaea, stretching as they do from Sparta to Mycenae, to the various islands and Troy and Anatolia, this is one of my personal favorite Total War maps of all time. Its use of color and lighting are virtually unmatched in the series, and is a herald of the dedication to the rest of the game as well. Each menu looks more beautifully handcrafted than the next, and lend themselves so well to the diverse and unique faction mechanics present within every playable faction. What's more is that Troy revolutionizes the trade system, essentially moving to a barter system instead of the traditional monetary system, and I love the way this changed the game. It even used a version of the Three Kingdoms diplomacy system, which in some ways, and by combining all of these features, made Troy one of my personal favorite Total War games in recent years, believe it or not. And the combat, even though it lacked the finesse and the finer aspects of the best Total Wars, offered some very interesting battle map layouts with plenty of room for tactics. And on top of that, the performance was just excellent. All of these aspects made for a good game then, a very good game in my opinion. But the big elephant in the room remained the issue of actually getting this game to the players who would play it. Remember, because of the game's reveal and marketing, the general consensus was that this was a Total War shovelware, a game made for easy buckmaking. And I emphasize players who would play it, because the fact of the matter is that, only on launch day, over 7 million people grabbed a free copy, which makes it by far the most wide-reaching Total War game of all time. Now, it must be said that we don't have any charts or stats on how much people actually played Troy on the Epic Store, but an entire year later, Troy received a massive update which in many ways changed the game. I'm of course talking about the Mythos update, which to many people, including myself, made Troy what it always should have been. It now leaned fully into the idea of the mythology of Troy, of the monsters, beasts and gods as actual factors on the battlefield, and even changed up the campaign by adding these wonderfully crafted models of ancient statues and other constructs. Considering its starting location, Mythos made Troy something of a best case scenario when considering the game's foundations. Sadly, Creative Assembly kind of shot themselves in the foot here. For one, this update was the only real major update to the game, with every other expansion offering little more than new major characters and their factions. But more importantly, if you wanted to now play Troy on Steam, which was finally possible, but also wanted to play the Mythos expansion, you would not only have to pay for the full game itself, but you also had to spend buku bucks on the expansion itself, which somehow made the premium Troy experience one of the most expensive Total War experiences ever. That makes no sense for a game that had very little hype to begin with, yet with the Mythos expansion could have been turned into something which a lot more people would be interested in playing. Especially could this be the case because Troy was now on Steam, which also meant much easier access to mods, friends, and communities for the average Total War player. And yet, Troy has an average of about 300 players a day, which is just abysmal for a modern Total War game with recent expansions. In the months after the Mythos release, however, perhaps the biggest mistake of CA was to never expand the scope of Troy. I would have loved that expansion into Mesopotamia and Egypt, for example, to really cement Troy as a true Bronze Age Total War. But we never got this despite something of a tease with the introduction of Memnon and related mechanics. I think the fate of Troy is one of the biggest tragedies in Total War history actually, as it comes down to potential versus reality, at least in terms of the fanbase. It is overall a really good game we have here now, and I would absolutely recommend it right now, and you can see more on why that is in my Troy Mythos review right here. But the initial reveal, marketing, and the lack of an increased universal Bronze Age scope likely hampered the success of this game, and I really wish this had not been the case. Thank you so much for watching. A Total War Saga Troy is an awesome Total War game, one I wish would be expanded even further beyond the shores of Greece. Let me know your thoughts on Troy and why it failed to become a beloved game among the fanbase, and if you enjoyed the video, I really hope you leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. Make sure to join us over on Discord as well. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.